Hey, welcome to the Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. As always, before we get started, we want to say thank you to Jehovah. Thank you for His Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for our families, our work, and our ability to do the things we're able to do. Book of Dad Radio Show, and my main man, Eddie Ice G, is hanging out as usual. What's up, Eddie?
What's up, brother? How you feeling?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. It's always good to see you.
I'm feeling good
out
today, man. It's good to hang out, but we have a special guest today, and I'm really feeling good about it.
Hey, I'm telling you, man. Well, I like that a term I just created and thought about is called journalistic spin. Journalistic spin, okay? So what that is people who do what we do, put their spin on it and make people think about it and you know, such the way they do or the way they want you to. But without any further ado, I'm going to say who is a better person than to pontificate about this than a fellow journalist who is doing great things out there in L.A., who also happens to be from the great hometown of Chester, Pennsylvania. So let's say hello and welcome to the Book of Dad Radio Show, Miss Laverne, or excuse me, Miss Tanisha Laverne Grant. How you doing, Tanisha? What's up?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. It is such a joy to spend my afternoon with you to talk about journalism and, you know, coming from Chester and anything else that we can get into. I mean, the net is wide open. I'm just here to answer all your questions and to just add to the tapestry of what it means to be a journalist in 2024.
Wow. Well, you know, since you want to ask stuff, won't you give me and Ed like 7 numbers that we can win the Powerball or the Mega Millions? You got that over there?
7 numbers. You know, let's go with. I love the number 28. You know, that's.
Hey, that's my birthday. Good number.
July. I was born July 28th, 1973. So you got 7, the 28, 1973. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's, yeah, you got it.
I'm writing it down. You'll get a cut when I hit that Powerball.
You got an extra one. Yeah.
Let's jump right in. I mean, everybody.
1973.
Hey, let's jump right in. We all got this thing that we think is the one story that has tainted or has changed the views of America, as it were, as part of a story, whatever. Tanisha, what is the story out there for you that did it for you, that made you not only want to get into journalism, but that you think had the most impact on society in general?
What made me want to get into journalism, honestly, is the bombing of Move. I was a kid. It was 1985. Yeah. And I remember my teachers talking about it, like ad nauseum. They just couldn't stop talking about it. My late father, who both of you may know, Thomas Lamont Grant Jr., was also very vested into what was happening in culture. You know, he majored in history. And so when that Move story broke, it just hit me. And I remember thinking to myself, how can I be a part of this? What career is this? You know, and is there space for me, you know, to tell story and to be a part of story and to tell it in a very fair and a very accessible way? But for me, again, it was Move. I'll just never forget. There was nothing like it that my young guys had ever seen in the history of America. You know, outside of slavery, you know, for my generation, I had never seen such an attack on Black bodies at all. And I was like 12 years old, and I just could not stop watching, you know, the news segments about, you know, Mayor Wilson Good and Move and what had happened and Ramona Africa. And it was just something that is still a very visceral story for me today. You know, and then another story I think would have been when the astronauts, you know, went to space and, you know, didn't get to come back home. Was another story. You know, I remember the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Margaret Thatcher, coming into office, and that was just like, oh wow, women can really be in power. So there were just all these stories that were happening, you know, when I was a very young human being, but still very vested, you know. So when we talk about, you know, the Chester Upland School District, I can't speak for anybody else, but I feel like I had very fair, beautiful teachers who were definitely dialed into what they wanted their students to know, because we were hitting all of the current event marks, all of them, all of them. So, I gave you asked for one. I gave you three. I gave you two actually.
It's definitely appreciated, and that's what we do. We pontificate, we think, and we pontificate as we think. But the thing I want to say
Yeah.
about the move thing, because I hadn't thought about that in years, is that it really brought light to one of the serious problems of police brutality in Philadelphia. I remember it being on 60 Minutes, and they actually showed where that guy was completely attacked and savagely attacked. But now
Hmm.
that you've kind of made it to LA. You didn't start your journalistic career in LA. How did you start journalism, and where were some of the experiences you had that kind of got you to where you are right now? I know you started some stuff in Philadelphia, correct?
Absolutely. My career, it started in elementary school.
Mm.
I attended Franklin, all those book reports, all those having to, get up in front of class and talk about, what you did for summer break, getting up in class and speaking about, what you got for Christmas and why was it your favorite Christmas gift. All those little nuggets, those pouring intos, and luckily I had teachers who thought like, wow, this kid is a great storyteller. Oh, she's a great writer. She can't stop talking. Instead of punishing her for that, right? How can we, shape her? And I'll never forget my first grade teacher, Miss Juanita Hart, may she rest in peace. One of her
Mm.
daughters, Mrs. Oakley, ended up being my theater teacher, years down the line once I got to high school. But it was Miss Juanita Hart who would always engage me as if we were age mates. She would say, "Tell me about your weekend," and she would listen to me, as
Mm.
if I was, this 45-year-old woman, sitting and telling her about my weekend. And I was 6 years old, and she would be like, "Well, what was your favorite news story?" And then it starts in the home. My parents were very, um, they were helicopter parents. They were young parents. So for them, they didn't want to repeat, um, what they would call, this system of, being a teenage parent.
Right.
Mm.
My parents had me 1 month after they graduated high school, and so that became a big fear for them. They didn't want that for their own children. So every day my parents were drilling home, you know, quote Malcolm X for me, give me something from Garvey, who is Ida B. Wells,
Mm.
name the first five books of the Bible, like drop right now, give them to me. I mean, that's how it was. So
Yeah.
getting together with family members, my parents, especially my dad, he would love to talk about, what his girls were doing. My girls can do this, my girls can do that, they can recite Shakespeare. They're already prepped for, SAT. So it was that immersion that really starts at home. And luckily, being a part of the Chester Upland School District, I had teachers who undergirded that. I tell parents all the time, the teachers add to what the children are already getting at home.
Mm.
Education doesn't start in school, the education starts at home. So I was lucky to have that environment. I'll never forget being in this like sixth or seventh grade, and I was taking piano lessons in school. And my mother decided, okay, well, my daughter needs a piano. And she saved her money. I came home one day and there was a piano in the middle of the living room, and we were living in the fairground.
Yeah.
And
Well,
my parents were, we are here, but this will not define at all, where you're going.
mm.
And
Oh.
I started taking piano lessons at home. The music teacher from Pulaski Junior High School would come to my home and give me these piano lessons, you
Wow.
know.
Wow.
And my mother worked, extra jobs. She was working as a florist, working at Kitty City, but she made sure, I think my lessons were like $40. She made sure she had her $40 to give me those lessons. And
Wow.
that's where it started for me, just wanting to have an inquisitive mind, just about everything, any subject. Nothing was, everything was on the board. Nothing was off the board. If I can learn a
Wow.
little bit about music, be it Beethoven, Bach, Leontine Price, Marian Anderson, be it learning about, Africa and Nigeria and crude oil, like all these things were
Mm.
happening like in the home. I used to sit
Okay.
up next to my dad when he was watching the news, and I wanted to know. I wanted to know. They were like, "Is she 8 or like 58?" Like this kid just wants to know everything, and so that's where it started. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity to participate in what was called the KYW News Studies program. I was in the 11th grade. I was working on the newspaper called The Welcome. Mr. Grimaldi was my advisor, and he said to me one day, he said, "You're a strong writer. I want you to participate in the KYW News Studies program." And it was about like 300 or something applicants. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I'm never going to get in. 300 applicants with children coming from, all these, what were some of the big Catholic schools? I can't even think of them. But
Yeah,
I
St.
just remember
James
thinking,
and those guys.
Yeah.
yeah,
Roman. Yeah,
St.
Roman.
Croix,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
yeah, like all these other so-called better schools. And I just remember thinking there was just no way. I told my dad, I was just like, I don't think I'm going to get in. And he's just like, write your best. And I'll never forget getting the news from Mr. Grimaldi that I got in, and it really set me on a path. I was like, oh wow, like I can really do this. I was 16 years old, and
Mhm.
there I was commuting from Chester to KYW News Radio every weekend for 3 months, and I had my little attache case, my little suit on, this blowout, and you couldn't tell me shit. I'm like, I'm doing this.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
And I'll
whoa,
never
whoa.
forget, getting a tour to
Okay.
the newsroom, seeing Beverly Williams, and I'm like, wow, and we got a chance to see her desk and doing my first drop, putting together that first news story and hearing my voice come over that news system. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
Mm.
this is the stuff that dreams are made of. And so it was my early days, like that foundation, just starting from elementary school onward. Um,
Mm.
I'll even go so far back as to say just, out of the womb. My
Okay.
mother
Hey,
said that I
well,
was breathing
hey,
out,
well, hold that thought.
breathing
Hold that thought for just a second.
yeah.
Hold that for just a second. Yeah, we need to take a quick break. But just for clarification, the fairgrounds are the projects in Chester. I used to live there too. But this is Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie G, and we're talking to Tanisha Grant. She's got a lot to tell us about journalism and her story, if you will. We're going to pick it back up on the other side where Eddie G will bring us back up, and we'll pick it up some more. We'll be right back.
See why listeners from over 150 countries around the world follow the Book of Dad radio show. Join Dr. Robert Benson and Eddie G as they chat with special guests who share their stories and information that will change your life. Watch and listen on lifeandspiritonline.com or subscribe to the Book of Dad radio show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by the NASCA Network.
Hey, welcome back to the Book of Dad radio show with Dr. Robert Benson and me, Eddie G. And today we are delving deep into the journey of Tanisha Grant, who is also from our hometown of Chester, and she's doing big things internationally. You hear what I said? She's around the world doing her thing. We're so proud of her. And, listening to your story, what I really like is you had a lot of people that poured into you. People saw your talent and your direction, and they helped to make it flourish, right? Like you said, with the teachers, with your family, they encouraged you. And that's what we need more of today. A lot of times you look at, I always remember Eddie Murphy telling his story and how when he was a kid, he used to do stand up in front of his family, and it was a funny family. And a lot of times when you see young people, that's who they're going to be. Not everybody starts out one way and ends up another way. A lot of times it's ingrained really early, like you said, from the womb on what you're going to be. And we're so glad that the opportunity for you to flourish and be who you are came to be. So I have a question about being a female journalist, okay? Because I used to do what you're doing now. I used to do the red carpets and those things. And one thing that frustrated me was the people, right? A lot of times it's a dog eat dog situation when you're on that red carpet. You got to fight for your space. They give you this little piece of paper. This is your territory, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And-
you know.
Oh, I know, right? Has your name on it, and this is it. And it's elbow,
that's
elbow,
it.
right? So tell me your experiences on being a woman and having to deal with that.
There are times where I do have to fight a little harder, especially if I am in a position between two men. Um, yeah, I really have to. I have to fight, and I have to earn my keep. I had a situation a few years back. This was the American Black Film Festival Honors. It was 2020, right before the pandemic. I'll never forget it. And I was on the red carpet, positioned after Roland Martin. And we all know and love Roland Martin. Big career, was at CNN, and now he's doing his own thing. So Roland was here with his square, his whole setup. And Roland is a consummate professional. He's got everything. He's got all the lights. He's got everything. And I'm like right behind him. And Roland and I have been in the same space, for years, and he's been very supportive of me. We've spoken. I have his home number. I can call Roland up right now and say, okay, this is what's happening. Can I get some feedback? And I'm almost certain he would be that person for me. But in this particular moment, Jamie Foxx was headed to the carpet. He stops for Roland Martin. They engage in this like man on man thing. Now, you know that you don't have a lot of time on the carpet.
That's right.
It is not the place for in-depth interviews. It just isn't. So Roland and Jamie are in this like Tonight Show format, like on this red carpet at ABFF Honors. And it's the end, like the carpet is ending. The carpet is about to close in maybe 5 minutes at this point.
Mhm.
So I started kind of shadowing their shot, like pushing myself in Roland's shot. Because I'm like, you guys, like, knock it off. Like, please stop. There are several journalists behind you, including myself, that would like to get some sound from Jamie. So when Jamie and Roland finally finished this interview, Jamie's like coming out and he's walking like really fast, like he's gonna walk past all the other journalists. And I puked out like right in front of him and stop him. Like he's walking and I'm like walking backwards with my mic, like, brother, come on. And he was like, what are you doing? You trying to block our shot? You was trying to block our shot. Like, I'm trying to get a soundbite. But anyway, I got a great interview, great soundbite from Jamie. It was amazing. He was being honored that night, and I think he had gotten honored like the night before at the NAACP Awards, Image Awards, and so it was just a big weekend. It was award season, but I'm like, Jamie Foxx, you're not about to get past me, and Roland, stop it, stop it. And it was so bad. Like the time was cut so tight that all the other younger journalists that were like behind me, they had their mics out. And it gets, when you got to put your mic into somebody else's shot, that's my pet peeve, but I get it because you need that soundbite. Your producer, your assignment editor is like, listen, you got a hit list. You got to get these 5 people or don't come back to studio. Like these 5 people, that's who you got to get. So everybody's trying to eat. Everybody's trying to make their producers and their editors happy. And that was one moment where I definitely had to really fight for myself. And when I posted it in real time, it went viral. People were like, oh man, Jamie, like you tried to walk past her, like, Roland, I can't believe you did that. It was a great moment. And there was another time I never forget. I was at Urban World Film Festival in New York City, and there was a gentleman who, again, was right before me. It was the premiere for a film from Hidden Empire Film Group, starring Jamie Foxx. I mean, starring Tyrese Gibson. It was called Black and Blue, I think. And so Tyrese comes to the carpet, and these two guys again are having this big, interview. I'm like, guys, like, knock it off. So I take the ball of my mic and I tap the gentleman in his back, like, hey, like, wrap this up. Wrap this up. Wrap this up. And, after it was over and I got my interview, he was like, T, you are something else. I was just like, you guys are not going to come out here and bully us. Like, you're just not going to do that. Because if I were a man standing behind you, you would have not have monopolized that type of time, especially if it were a man whose work that you admired and respected, who you considered an ally. You would not have done that. And that's why I tapped you in the back with my microphone,
Well, I'm glad it was your mic that you're hitting with and not a baton,
Stop it. No, it was just some light taps, like, to say, come on, man. Come on. Like, we're out here too. A baton.
All right.
Stop.
All right, hey.
Yeah, but
all right, Tanisha, we're going to take one more break here and come back and hit you with some more questions, okay? Keep it coming. It's some great stuff. Book of That Radio Show with Eddie G, myself, Dr. Robert Benson, and Miss Tanisha Laverne Grant. We'll be right back.
You have something special. You have greatness in you. Hello, I'm Les Brown, Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. I want you to spread the word to your family members and friends to listen to LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. Absolutely. And let me share with you why we're going to be focusing on positive things, because whatever you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. And now more than ever, when the suicide rate has increased over 33%, when the suicide rate of young children between 5 and 11 has doubled, people feeling hopeless and stressed out and powerless. We need programming that can bring out the greatness in them. And that's what we will be focused on. When you listen, it will be an experience that will transform your life. LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, and we're right back. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie Ice G. Book of That Radio Show. Get us where you get your podcasts, because we have great guests and great topics, as we do right now with Tanisha Grant. Well, as we mentioned before, we're all from Chester, Pennsylvania, which is south of Philadelphia. One of the schools that kind of has like a pipeline for many of the students out of Chester High School is Cheney University. Well, Tanisha's father used to work at Cheney University. As a matter of fact, when I graduated from high school, he was actually a counselor for me, processing me in, but I kind of ran off and went to college. Not to college, but I went to the Air Force, which was a better thing for me to do at the time. Well, Tanisha is actually a former Miss Cheney. She actually was a queen at Cheney, but her journey didn't originally bring her to Cheney. Something happened to bring her there eventually. And she's going to be kind enough to let us break what it was that changed her life and her trajectory academically to Cheney University. Tanisha, the floor is yours. Talk to us.
Oh, thank you. So when I was a student at Edinburgh, if you don't know, Edinburgh was the school where my father went first, too. Mm-hmm. He actually transferred from Edinburgh University to Cheney. And he had great experiences at Edinburgh, but because he had a young family, myself, and a wife with my mom, he thought it best for him to come back to the Philadelphia area and attend Cheney University. But when I was applying for colleges and universities, I was reluctant. I had a lot of reluctance about going to an HBCU for a myriad of reasons. And my dad was just like, okay, I'm going to respect your decision and let's try Edinburgh for you. So I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. When I was a student at Edinburgh, and for those of you who don't know, Edinburgh is located right outside of Erie, Pennsylvania. It is freezing. It starts snowing in October and it doesn't stop until April. Very, very cold. And my family couldn't send me enough thermals. They couldn't send me enough down coats. I was never warm enough. Never warm enough when I was a student at Edinburgh. And I got a really bad cold that I just couldn't shake. And I think it was just, the stress of being a new student, a freshman. I was 18 years old. I was away from home for the very first time. And, the coursework was definitely challenging, but I was like getting by, making it through. I had professors there, white professors, who were making all sorts of assumptions about my level of education and my capabilities and whether or not I should even be at Edinburgh University. But I think that's par for the course for any African American student who is attending a predominantly white institution. So I was really sick. I just wasn't getting better. And I went to the infirmary one evening around maybe like 5 o'clock. And 5 o'clock at Edinburgh and Erie, it's already dark outside. But I'm like, I got to get through finals. Like I was missing class. I just didn't have the strength to even like get up and go to class. And, once you start missing classes, you can forget about your GPA for the most part, So I said, I got to get better. If I can just get through my finals, maybe I can get some withdrawal passes for a couple of courses that I was having, some issues with. And I go to the infirmary. I check in. I'm getting seen by a doctor who mishandled me sexually. And I was devastated. I couldn't really reconcile it. I felt like I couldn't tell my family. I definitely felt like I could not tell my father. He would have burnt the university down. And I just remember like laying there. I had the tie on, and it was the room was frigid. It was just really, 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 really cold. And what this doctor was doing was just wildly inappropriate. It was sexual misconduct. And I just remember my eyes like welled with tears. I got dressed and I just like sped out of there. And I remember there were some other younger women like waiting. And I just kind of looked at them like, get out of here, And I just went back to my dorm room and I probably slept for the rest of the semester.
Wow.
And my dad got my grades and I had a GPA that was like barely 2 point something. And he was mortified because he was just like, what's happening with my girl? Like, I know my kid. She loves books. She loves to read. She's a vested learner. What happened to my daughter? And I could never bring it. I could never tell my father. To this day, he passed not knowing that is what happened. And he said, okay, this GPA is unacceptable. I'm taking you to Cheney. And we packed my stuff up, get home to Chester. We were living at Bridgewater Apartments. That next semester, he walked me right up into the president's office, introduced me, and was like, this is my daughter, Tanisha, and she goes here now. Next thing you know, I had a and, I'll go on record every time saying Cheney University of Pennsylvania, the oldest HBCU founded in 1837, truly saved my life.
Wow.
Truly saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're talking to two fathers of daughters, and you're absolutely right. If your father, and I knew your father, that university would have been burned down and that the doctor would have been part of the rubbish, okay? Well, and thank you so much for sharing that on the Book of Dad radio show, because like I said, you got two dedicated fathers here, and Father's Day is coming up. So thank you for sharing that with us. But along those lines, silence isn't golden when those types of things happen. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what's coming up with you, how we can get a hold to you, and what can we look for you for? What can we look for from you in the future?
You can look for me a book, working on 2 books simultaneously. One is about my career in Hollywood in the entertainment journalism space, and the other one is, of course, coming of age in Chester, PA, and locking in with the experience of my dad, particularly once my parents were divorced and separated, and my dad had sole custody of me and my sister, which is pretty remarkable for the time. You know, what man in the prime of his life in the 80s is saying, "Okay, I'm going to take my girls." So I definitely want to tell that story, and it's not to undermine, you know, women. It's not to undermine my mother at all. It's just about telling the story of a father who was very dedicated and dialed into what he wanted his daughters to be, and he had a very clear vision for that. And he saw it through. He saw it through, and so look for my books. Hopefully, I'll be able to get them out for 2025. And continue to work in the entertainment journalism space. You can always find me on my syndicated digital platform, Black in America, which is where I contribute all of my content to. I also freelance and I contribute to New York's Pix 11 News. So to all of my New Yorkers and people in New Jersey and Connecticut, thank you for watching me on my morning segments on Pix 11 News. And I also contribute to Good Morning Britain in London, in the UK, and also Arise News in Lagos, Nigeria. So, yeah.
Nollywood. Well, Eddie G, man, we can't get out of here without some comments from you. Come on in here. Let's go.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I want to say to you that you are a great example of excellence for many different situations, for women, for Black women, and from the people of Chester. You know, there's a saying, what Chester makes Chester. And,
yes,
you know, you hear a
sir.
lot of like negative things sometimes, but a lot of times we need to focus on the positive and the things that are generated from, arose from the concrete, you know? So we're proud of you. We want to continue to support you and everything that you do. And I just want to say thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, gentlemen.
Tanisha, what a great show. And you definitely are going to be back on the Book of Dad radio show. And we're going to hang out with you. So we'll cross-promote each other and get each other stuff out there as we always do. But, you know, it's kind of hard to close the show for me because, like I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little emotional about what you just shared with us because, like I say, I know exactly what I have done if I knew about something like that. So thank you for sharing. But we're going to close out the show today.
It's great to let it out, actually.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
yeah,
I held on to it for so long. So once I made it public, I knew that, all right, I'm ready to talk about it. And it's taken me pretty much, you know, half my life to do it. But
okay, well, great. Right.
No.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us, okay? All right. Well, let's close out the show with a quote. And this quote is simply this. It says, you don't have to be content, but you definitely have to be patient. This Book of Dad radio show, I'm Dr. Robert Benson, and we most certainly will talk to you next time. Thank you for listening.